Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the JKWD podcast, where we are just having a good time. How you doing, Kelvin?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. Sometimes I think we should just roll the podcast from when we first, hook up in the morning and then just put that whole conversation out there and let people hear what we go through before we get to the part where they get to hear us.
If we did that today, they'd hear you talking to Marlena for a good 8 minutes, probably. She went off and she had a long monologue.
That was a fun thing. That was a fun thing. But life here is good. Weather's good. We don't seem to be having, we're reopening. We're not having a lot of problems with restaurants and stuff right now. So not that I'm running down to jump in all of them and try them, but so far we seem to be staying at a reasonably, I guess, what's a reasonable rate for COVID advances. So a lot of restaurants are opening, and so I mean, I had ice cream at Denny's a couple of weeks ago, and
Now, did you actually go in and sit down and have?
Yeah, we actually went in and sat down.
Wow.
It was they had it. They had it. They had lots of social distancing. All the staff was wearing gloves and masks and stuff. Once we were seated, we could take our masks off. But there was
it doesn't make sense to have you try to eat with masks on.
It's tougher. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did that, and that was okay. A lot of the other restaurants, the retreat here, they've got an outside area. I haven't braved that one yet. But
we actually go ahead.
No, you're good.
We ate outside at a restaurant on Mother's Day, so that was May.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time this comes out, it will have already happened. But my wife Jenny's birthday is coming up, and we're going to go out to dinner for that. And it's going to be another place with an enormous outside area where tables would generally be 8-10 feet apart anyway.
Right.
But yeah, we've been doing takeout about once a week. We want our favorite places to stay open, and frankly, it gets a little tiring cooking every night.
Oh yeah. So
so we'll go out for that, and hopefully our case rate here is still really high. I think what happened is going to, looking back at the history of stuff, is the northeastern states got COVID really early, and it spread very quickly, and then they shut down, and it was that early on the mortality rate was really high, and it was between 4 and 10% some places, and we opened up in Georgia. We opened up a lot earlier than a lot of us thought we should have, and our case rate is still really high. Like we're plus 2,000 cases a lot of days. We're still over 10% positive tests almost daily. Sometimes it's 8%, sometimes it's 14%. But our mortality rate has been hovering around to 2.1%. So we still have a lot of cases, but by waiting longer to open, by getting the cases more toward June, July, August than back in February and March, like New York and New Jersey really started getting cases we at least had figured out some of the medicine and some of the care.
Mm-hmm.
So the mortality rate isn't as high. There's still a lot of people who get COVID coming out with what looks like is going to be lifelong lung and heart problems. So probably not something that I want, but at least it's better than dying of it, I guess.
We'll talk about it in a couple of months and see if you if you still feel that way. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah, that's good. So we're doing all right. Luckily, I've stayed healthy. Knocking on wood. That's my head. And my family has managed to stay healthy. So we're doing
good.
So I got nothing to complain about, really.
Awesome. Speaking of nothing to complain about, but stepping it up a little bit from there. Brought to you today by Vitamin K Daily. Get your daily dose. Wow, my tongue is not working yet. Get your daily dose of positive from the Prince of Positive himself, Kelvin P. Ringle, Sr.
There you go.
Sitting there on the other end of the microphone. Sitting on the other microphone. We're not sitting here on one microphone with two ends on it. That's weird.
It'd be a big microphone.
A very big microphone.
Big microphone. Yeah. But no.
VitaminKDaily.com. Get yourself 4 weeks free. And then after that, it's only $24.95 a year. You know, it's a little under a dime a day. Dime a day. But if it's not for you, you just cancel before the end of the 4 weeks, and you won't get charged even at almost a dime a day.
Nope. Sure won't.
VitaminKDaily.com. Philosophical supplements for your attitude, health. And there's a reason I don't say that phrase much. I'm doing that without reading it too.
Good job.
VitaminKDaily.com. Go get yourself 4 weeks free. Enjoy the music.
Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go.
Yeah, they canceled the race I've been running. I've been training for.
Yeah.
But I think since I've been doing so well with the running and the dieting, I'm gonna keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I notice is that as my runs get longer,
yes,
I tend to change what's going on in my ears for the runs. So our library is teamed up with 2 audiobook apps, also ebook. Also ebooks is there. RB Digital and Hoopla for our library. I know your library also uses both of those, and they use Overdrive and stuff too. But it's cool to be able to just borrow audiobooks. You not have to lay out the cash for it.
True.
And if I'm running right now probably about 5-6 hours a week, even if I only listen to audio book for that long, I tend to run them on like 1.5 speed. So basically if you get a 3-hour audiobook, it takes you 2 hours to listen to. So for 5 hours running, I can get through about 6.5, 7 hours of. So only that. Probably a little more than that.
It's close.
It's probably 7.5 to 8 hours of audio. So I can get a book or more a week.
Yeah,
which is nice. I re-listened to Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Okay.
good book for these times, amid cancel culture.
I don't think I read that one.
Yeah, especially during an election year.
Okay.
He writes about kind of our need to humans need to build a tribe, to have people around us to feel safe in and about. And he also talks a bit about military units, and there's and PTSD and veteran suicides.
Right.
It turns out that we're so wired to want, we're so wired to be involved in protection, especially as men, but women will take on that role as well.
Right.
We're so, but there's a tiger coming, you get nothing to do but protect yourself and your family, right? And the other members of your tribe, they're part of your family, right? And we're so wired for that when people go off to war, they would rather, their brains would rather than be in war. Once they come home, the reason they get PTSD is because they're used to having something, they're used to being on high alert and having something to protect.
Right.
And they lose that. Especially if you put people in a benefit situation where maybe they don't even have to work. I know that you've been involved in a group over at Syracuse University that trains veterans to start businesses.
Right.
And that way, not only do they have something to do, but they get to be charged with.
Right.
Which is great. It's something to protect. That all comes out of that's what I got out of Tribe. And I listened to some fiction. I went back through. I found a Chuck Palahniuk book that I don't remember having read. I thought I read them all, but he's the guy who wrote Fight Club. He's most famous for, but I like a lot of his other books. I reread Lullaby, him, and I got some Douglas Rushkoff going, and I'm gonna start reading some old philosophy, because I just don't know that stuff. Like, I know of Nietzsche and I know of Derrida, but I don't know the work.
Right.
So this is an excellent time for me to do stuff like that.
I could do that. I haven't read. I don't normally read novels. I've been reading self-help stuff since I was relatively young, mid-20s. That's relatively young. God, to be referring to that as relatively young from here, it's like, oh, what's going on? But I don't read that much for fun. I used to read for fun. There used to be a series called The Destroyer, and I've got probably like 15 books in that series, and it was about an old guy. What the heck was his name when he came out? Anyway, The Destroyer. And there was an old Korean guy who taught him to be this secret agent. And I went through several of those series years ago, and it's like, I really should just go back through them again. But typically I read stuff that teaches me how to get along better with people, how to not abuse them with my opinion for their problem, stuff like that. Good life coaching, informational stuff, like, okay, treat the problem, not the person. I mean, treat the person, not the problem. By the way, your opinion doesn't matter here. You're trying to figure out like what's going on to them, what's important to them. Those kinds of things I do being a life coach. That's fun. But every once in a while, you just have this urge to say, well, if you do this, which is not true, which is why one of the books I bought recently, was, and the guy's name is Michael Bungay Stanier. It's cool. And he wrote a book called The Coaching Habit, which is very good. But this one is called The Advice Trap. And he talks about being an advice monster. What kind of advice monster are you? What triggers you to start giving advice to people? So I bought it recently to read it, and I've just got to stop that, particularly with like family, right?
Well, yeah,
particularly with family, yeah.
That's the difference between like a therapist and a coach, right? A therapist wants to treat the problem. Here's your problem. Here's how we solve it. Right. A coach asks questions to the person, lets the client figure it out for themselves.
Right, basically.
Or at least kind of directs the client to a solution through the questions.
Perhaps calls attention to things the client hasn't been thinking of, or putting a name on stuff. Good stuff. But it was fun. But so I read one James Patterson book, which I don't know, when I was talking about that, and the name of that book was Private. There's several of them with the private name. This one was just private. And the writing, I'm a Toastmaster too, and I like speaking and, learning how to phrase things so that they have impact. That whoever wrote that book was magnificent. The pictures they painted for your mind, and I was like, wow. And that was the day that I got that. I thought it was when NPR. Sometimes you read books or you have acts or stuff like that. So I got in a car, and my car tends to turn NPR on. So I thought somebody was reading this book on NPR, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I go in the store and I come back out to go back home, and I turned the car on again, and the book they were still reading the book. And it was like, wow, must be a good book. So I listened to it on the way home, and I said, man, I really wish I could go home and find that. And I walked in the house, and I took my phone out, and I turned my phone on somehow. I picked up my phone, and then it's like the book was still playing. I'm like, wait a minute, what kind of trash is this? So it turned out what happened was I had turned on my Audible app, and Audible had downloaded a free book to me and didn't really tell me. So this book was playing. So when I turned it on in the house, it was still on. And I was so fascinated with that book and the writing and just the story he was telling. I actually shut down everything I was doing, and I listened to that book for the rest of the night till I finished it, which I don't think that has ever happened to me before. And I'm like, that was just so refreshing. And I was invigorated for several days. And now I have another one, but I got to be careful when I start reading it, because if it has the same effect on me, I'm not going to get nothing done for the rest of that day. But yeah, but
sometimes that's fine, right? Like sometimes just shutting down to take in something new, something novel, gives you the ability to be more efficient with your stuff going forward.
True, gets the mind going. So I decided recently, because I'm always a guy who advocates, putting something, reading something positive at least, 15 minutes a day, preferably before bed if that's the only time you got to do it, just to keep positive things going into your mind. And recently, particularly with the COVID going on, I haven't been doing that. So it's like we have to get back to, because you got to keep feeding your brain new stuff, or it just sits there and waddles in the old stuff. And it's nice to get different thought processes and trains of thought and to think about different things. But maybe the reason I don't do it too often is because I know you, and I know that I'm going to get a challenge, anytime I talk to you. But yeah, so that kind of stuff. So now we got to figure out what I'm going to read next, and so I can end up being a better person, the next day. So.
Well, yeah, and we looked up your library a minute ago,
Yeah.
and found out that they work with a bunch of different apps. So you can actually just borrow ebooks or audiobooks from your library. My library, like I said, has a couple. Yeah, there's also for ebooks, Project Gutenberg has a lot of texts that have fallen into public domain, and they do in like text or PDF format. I think text file format mostly.
Yeah.
And then LibriVox.
Maybe they have not Kindle, but ebook. Yeah, ebook format. So
Yeah.
You know what else our library does, and I don't know who else's library does that, but our library subscribes to lynda.com.
Oh yeah, they do.
So
your
anybody who is a library member can take lynda.com courses for free. And lynda.com teaches so if you need to learn something new, there's all kinds of stuff on lynda.com.
Yeah, I mean, you can learn languages, you can learn history, you can learn new math,
photography. You can learn all kinds of stuff with that. So if you just need something to do to put it in your mind, that's a good one too.
Yeah, and then there's also LibriVox, which offers audiobooks of public domain works, but sometimes you got to be careful with LibriVox because it's volunteer reading, and
right.
Like I listened to one that was a bunch of friends drinking and alternating chapters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, it was a James Joyce novel. It was some of it was kind of meant to be fun. I think it might have been Ulysses, honestly. But it was something that was meant to be fun. And a challenge, and so they had fun, did it. But I've also read, I've also listened to other stuff on there that was more serious. The Alchemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's another free one.
Just something new to put into the mind instead of TV news and stuff.
Yeah, well, and instead of doom scrolling Twitter all day.
Yeah.
Or I mean, even scrolling through Facebook all day. It's just it's nice to connect. It's nice to connect with people sometimes, but more often than not, you're not taking in anything.
Nah, I connect with them.
Helping you grow.
I connect with them and then I get off.
Yeah.
And I turned off all my alarms, so I don't know if somebody leaves me a message. I have to actually go look from time to time. And I just the whole messenger. Hey, you got a message? No, sorry, we don't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm entirely on the computer for that. So like I don't get a notification on my phone. I don't even have Facebook or Facebook Messenger on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if I happen to not be sitting in front of a computer for a couple of days, you're just not going to get your Facebook message to me.
Oh man, so it's like, I have to decide if I want to do that one. Just take Facebook app off my phone. That would be.
The other thing I did was I put iOS allows you to put a limit on apps, the time limit on apps.
Really?
So
is that new?
In the last year or so, year and a half, you can go into settings and screen time and set app limits.
Uh-huh.
So I set a limit for Twitter and Instagram for 10 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So if I hit 10 minutes, it pops up. You can just override it, right. But if you set the limit, why would you override it? So I did that yesterday. I haven't hit that limit very often. I've been very conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to tweet about the convention because it was the last night and it was the only night I watched. And I started to tweet about it, and then my time limit hit. And while I was writing my tweet,
Right.
So I woke up this morning and my tweet was still there, half written, and I hit cancel. It was kind of an in the moment thing, and the moment passed. So, that was probably better for me. And the only reason I keep those on my phone is because I like to. It's much easier to post to Instagram from your phone than your computer. And then also I like to share stuff that I read on my phone to Twitter. Like, I like to, if I'm listening to a podcast, I can hit that share button and just tweet it out. Or if I can, it's so much easier than saving it all up, emailing it to myself, and then tweeting it when I get to a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I keep those limits fairly tight, so that I don't spend all day on it. And I found that I'm spending more time reading my Kindle instead of reading my Kindle app instead of reading Twitter.
Right.
Because I don't
better for your mind, that Kindle app, I think.
Well, it depends on what you're reading, but I'm reading something that's good for my mind. So
yeah, there you go. So but put something good in your mind.
Yeah.
So something else, because I mean you can't concentrate on all the news and stuff these days. I mean, even because it's worse now than it used to be, and if we don't get outside of that, then we just
well, I mean, it's so much more prevalent. The TV is always on, or the radio is always on, or the computer's always on, your phone's always on, and then we're not going anywhere because of COVID, so we're just sitting inside looking for more garbage to shove into our brains.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you remember? I borrowed movies from a friend of mine. Well, our friend Mitch. Months ago, I was going to go through all these movies. Like, there were like 4 Mission Impossible movies, and then we had Wonder Woman. And last week, I finally got to watch Wonder Woman.
How was it?
And a friend of mine came over. And we were going to go out and do some photography. We were going to go out and do some photography stuff, but it just wasn't feeling it. So we ended up, watch a movie? Here, let's watch Wonder Woman. It was actually pretty good. There was a section of it that it got kind of long for me, like what's happening in here. But the action stuff was good. The computer generated graphics were magnificent when they decided to do some of that stuff. And so I enjoyed it. I didn't watch it, twice in succession like I did with the Mission Impossible movies, of course. However, I still have it. I could go back and get select scenes, but I told my family I watched a movie, and they're like, "Hello, who is this? Is this Dad? You don't watch movies." I know, but I just watched Wonder Woman. They said, "Whoa, wasn't that great?" Yeah, it was good. Because I never read the comic book, so the movie was like my exposure. So it's a little change once in a while.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's my contribution.
Well, thank you for being here. Thanks everybody for listening. Hey, if you get something out of these, give us a review. Share with a friend. If you got one friend who might learn something from it, go ahead and just pass it along. That's how the show gets heard, really. When you pass it along, when you rate, review it, share it, it'll move up the charts in podcast searches for podcasts such as ours. And that's always a good thing. VitaminKDaily.com. Get your 4 weeks free. JKWDpodcast.com. Get show notes for this episode and all other 220 other episodes.
Wow.
That's a lot of them. And we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. A Better Humanhood production.